Welcome back to J. Cal's View, the journey of a journalist. I'm your host, J. Cal, and I want to say, hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys listening, retweeting the show on Twitter, sharing it on Facebook. That means the world to me, guys. Listeners are at an all-time high, and I thank you personally, each and every one of you that are listening, for these numbers. The growth of the podcast is all based on you and your curiosity about what's going on with the National Wrestling Alliance. So going forward, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk NWA. Just go ahead and hashtag that. Hashtag talk NWA. So this week, what are we going to talk about? Well, there is a new talent that has been announced for the NWA studio television show. We're going to talk about that. You know what else we're going to talk about? My boy. My boy's got a shot at your world's heavyweight champion. That's right, the Librarian from All Elite Wrestling, former Heritage Hollywood champion for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Actually, he's a former United Wrestling Network television champion. Recently made his debut in Middle Kingdom Wrestling in China. I'm talking about the producer, the pretty, the biggest man in pro wrestling, Peter Avalon. He's got his shot, finally got his shot at Nick Aldis and the 10 pounds of gold, and that takes place this Saturday, and we're going to talk about that. And all this more on J. Cal's View. Stick around. I got more for you.
I'm really excited about Jim Cornette joining the NWA as a color commentator. He showed in MLW that he's a professional. He can work with people who he doesn't necessarily agree with or like their style. And he can set aside his personal beliefs and be a professional.
So the late breaking news for the National Wrestling Alliance today was the new talent added to the NWA TV studio show, which will film in Atlanta, Georgia, this September 29th and October 1st, is none other than Jim Cornette. Yes, Jim Cornette will join the broadcasting galley to call the action ringside. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Jim Cornette, number one, where have you been hiding? Number two, Jim Cornette historically has meant a lot to the National Wrestling Alliance, both as a manager and also as a promoter, an on-air talent, backstage interviews with Jim Crockett Promotions, part of the broadcast team in the past. So it kind of makes sense that, the NWA of the modern era, William Patrick Corgan and David Lagana trying to bridge that gap, if you will, with the NWA of today and the NWA of yesteryear. So it really does make a lot of sense. Plus, Cornette's been involved with a lot of what the NWA's done. He's been a part of the journey ever since they started producing their own events. The 70th anniversary show, Jim Cornette was there also calling action with Joe Galli, so this is a bit of a reunion. He was also at the Crockett Cup. Heck, he was doing meet and greets with Billy Corgan at the Crockett Cup. You could go through the Alliance YouTube page and see that. It's actually one of our most popular videos. But Jim Cornette is a little divisive. Am I saying that correctly? He tends to split the crowd. So there's a lot of people who are excited about this, but there's quite a few who are not. And I mean, you could just check the Twitter comments from where the NWA made the announcement. At Cash Jackson, also known as Wrestling Content, his response was, "Bummer. I was going to watch. Let me start over. Bummer. I was going to watch, but I just can't support the homophobic comments. The fact I can, with a simple Google search, hear Cornette calling people the N-word, well, I just can't let that slide." Pro Wrestling Fandom at PW_fandom. I love Nick Aldis and respect the NWA and what Billy's trying to do, but I don't love them enough to support Jim Cornette in 2019. Best of luck going forward. Not a road I want to travel with you. Ouch. At Ryan Griffin 91. Yeah, no thanks. I was thinking about going, but no. I will not support this if he's involved. He being Jim Cornette. But they wasn't all negative. Larry, our friend, the living legend Larry at LarryB3960 says, well, his response was a GIF. Awesome. And then at M. Sorrentia, I think I'm saying that right, also known as the Shuffle Alliance, Jim and the NWA are synonymous in my book. Great news. So it's a mixed bag, guys. It really is. I could see where the NWA was trying to go with this. I think mostly, like, my experiences with Jim Cornette have been far and few in between. Always kind. I've seen him be very gracious to the fans. Hell, he took a picture with me. Told me about the camera I was using. That was kind of fun. In fact, at the Crockett Cup, if you don't mind me taking off on a little bit, we talked about cameras as I was trying to get a good photo of Cornette there for the show. He was telling me asked what settings I was on, gave me some suggestions on how to take photos a little bit differently to get better lighting and whatnot. And I thought that was really cool because, I'm just a guy. Cornette doesn't know me from any Adam, Tom, or Harry walking down the street. But he took the time to kind of give me some advice as a photographer. He knew that's what I was there for. He saw me walking around filming and taking photos. So I thought that was really cool. And the way he interacted with the live crowd at the meet and greet, again, class. Very nice guy, told great stories. But there's the other side of Jim Cornette where he does galvanize a fan base that, it's his way or the highway. Looks at wrestling as a certain way. And I've always been the proponent that wrestling is like Baskin Robbins, right? That every flavor is available to you. And I'm not going to tell somebody that chocolate isn't good if I like vanilla, or, don't let me have my chocolate chip cookie dough because you prefer mint chocolate chip. I think there's enough flavor, that there's enough variety that we can all choose. And I've heard others have different takes on that. So where do I stand on it? Ultimately, I think this is a good move for the NWA. Divisive or not, if fans of the National Wrestling Alliance were going to tune in to the show, they were going to tune in with or without Jim Cornette. Yes, it's going to turn some fans off, and that's a shame. But ultimately, I think the history and bridging the gap is going to be very important for the fans. Not the fans, but the front office of the NWA. They want to connect with as many old school wrestling fans as they can. And remember, this is a 20-year plan. We're only on year 2. So that's where I think it's going to go. So my guy, Peter Avalon, this Saturday, September 14th, Mesa, Arizona, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, part of the United Wrestling Network. They were supposed to have this match over a year ago when Nick Aldis was going to go and face Peter Avalon in Arizona. Well, that's where producer Peter Avalon came from. He actually produced the show for Championship Wrestling from Arizona. So this match was supposed to happen over a year ago, and it kind of got pinched in between the Australian tour that Nick Aldis was going to have with the House of Hardcore and some family problems, emergency on Nick Aldis' side. Whatever, the match didn't happen. That's what kind of kicked off the feud between Tim Storm and Peter Avalon, because, hey, Peter Avalon was ticked off. You guys don't know this, or maybe you do. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Episode 1, started off with Colt Boom Boom Cabana announcing his intention to challenge for the World's Heavyweight Championship. And who did he beat that night? Pretty Peter Avalon. So to say that PPA has some history with the NWA would be an understatement. Of course, he, for a long time, was a member of the Standard. Now, the Standard was a stable in the early days of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood that featured Peter Avalon, Joey Chaos, Austin Aries, and of course then world heavyweight champion Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. And back then I don't believe Avalon ever got an opportunity to challenge Colt Cabana or Adam Pearce for the heavyweights championship. And of course we remember PPA throwing down that challenge to Nick Aldis that went because of what I previously said didn't happen. When Cody came to Hollywood, Avalon challenged him. That match didn't happen. So after all this time, the biggest man in pro wrestling, Peter Avalon, has an opportunity this weekend to challenge Nick Aldis for the World's Heavyweight Championship. And that title might be on the road to All Elite Wrestling, because the Librarian, Peter Avalon, has a deal with the All Elite Wrestling. What is the likelihood that the title's going to go anywhere? Slim and none, but I think it's going to be a fun match, and it has a lot of history that has been built up to this moment. I'm hoping that I'm almost positive that the NWA office will be there. By office, I mean Lagana. They'll be producing hopefully a 10 pounds of gold to kind of close this segment of Peter Avalon's involvement in the NWA. It'll be a nice send-off. Of course, for you guys that didn't know this too, Peter Avalon, besides getting the gig with the All Elite Wrestling, he just came back from China, a place not unfamiliar to Nick Aldis, and he looked great in his short, brief time there in China, wrestling for Middle Kingdom Wrestling. So, of course, Peter Avalon's not going to win the title, guys. Let's not be crazy here. But could you imagine what happens if the richest prize in history of pro wrestling, the 10 pounds of gold, ended up on All Elite Wrestling right before the NWA goes into the studio to produce their own television? It's a pipe dream, won't happen, but it's fun to talk about. So that's going to do it for this week. And, I really appreciate you guys tuning in to our show. But as they say in the business, the show must go on. This is the march to the studio show, to the TV studio show in Atlanta, Georgia. I will be there, and I hope you will be too. But until then, this is J Cal's View, and I'll see you at the matches. Good night now.